The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the Ashford Estate's grand ballroom, sending shards skittering across designer shoes and $1,000 hemlines. Chen stood frozen in the center of the room, her 8-month pregnant belly pressing against the simple black dress she'd borrowed from a department store clearance rack, while her mother-in-law's words echoed off the vaulted ceilings like gunshots. Gold digger. That's all you've ever been, and everyone here knows it. Caroline Ashford's voice carried the practiced projection of someone accustomed to commanding attention at charity galas and country club luncheons. At 62, she wore her wealth like armor. Chanel suit, Cartier jewelry, a smile sharp enough to draw blood. She'd orchestrated this moment perfectly, waiting until the annual Ashford Foundation gala had reached its peak. Until 200 of San Francisco's elite had gathered in her ballroom, until Maya had nowhere to run. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered, her hands instinctively moving to protect her swollen belly. "I don't understand what's happening." "Don't you?" Caroline's laugh was crystalline and cruel. She gestured around the room where guests had stopped mid-conversation to watch the spectacle unfold. "Did you really think we didn't notice? A nobody from nowhere, conveniently pregnant 6 months after marrying my son?" Maya's husband, ex-husband, she corrected herself numbly, stood beside his mother with his arm around a blonde woman Maya had never seen before. Ethan Ashford looked nothing like the man who'd whispered promises in her ear 3 years ago, who'd claimed to love her simplicity, her lack of pretension, her difference from the social climbing women who usually pursued him. At 35, he'd perfected the art of looking both apologetic and vindicated, as if he regretted the necessity of public humiliation, but accepted it as unavoidable. "Maya, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," Ethan said, his voice carrying that patient tone he used when explaining basic concepts to people he considered less intelligent. "We all know why you married me. The prenup protects the family assets, and my lawyers have already filed the divorce papers. You'll receive a modest settlement, more than generous considering the circumstances." The blonde woman beside him, young, probably 25, with the polished perfection of someone who'd never worried about grocery bills or student loans, leaned into Ethan's embrace. "It's better for everyone this way," she said, her voice saccharine with false sympathy. "Especially the baby. Children can sense when they're not really wanted by both parents." Maya felt something cold settle in her chest, spreading through her veins like frost. She'd spent the past 8 months enduring Caroline's subtle digs, Ethan's growing distance, the knowing looks from his friends and family. She'd convinced herself it was pregnancy paranoia, that the isolation and loneliness were temporary, that after the baby came, everything would return to the love she'd thought they'd shared. She'd been wrong. "The prenup," Maya repeated slowly, her mind struggling to process through the fog of humiliation and shock. "You think I married Ethan for money?" "We don't think it, dear. We know it." Caroline took a step closer, her Chanel No. 5 perfume overwhelming in its intensity. "You targeted my son specifically. I had you investigated. Did you think I wouldn't? A graduate student with crushing debt, working 3 jobs to make ends meet, no family, no connections, no prospects. Then suddenly you're Mrs. Ethan Ashford, living in a Pacific Heights mansion, wearing clothes you could never afford." "Clothes you forced me to wear," Maya said quietly, "because my own weren't appropriate for your social circle." "Details." Caroline waved a dismissive hand, her diamond bracelet catching the light from the chandelier above. "The point is, you saw an opportunity and you took it. I might even admire the ambition if it hadn't involved trapping my son with a pregnancy." The accusation hit Maya like a physical blow. Her hands tightened protectively over her belly, feeling her daughter kick in response to her elevated heart rate. "I didn't trap anyone. "We wanted this baby," Ethan said. Ethan says a lot of things when he's thinking with the wrong part of his anatomy. Caroline's smile could have frozen champagne. But he's come to his senses now, thanks to Alexandra here. She gestured to the blonde, who preened under the attention. Alexandra understands our world. She knows how to be an Ashford wife, something you never quite managed. Maya looked around the ballroom at faces she'd seen dozens of times at events just like this one. Women she'd tried to befriend, men whose hands she'd shaken, couples whose children she'd asked about with genuine interest. Not one of them met her eyes. They were either studying their phones with sudden fascination or whispering to each other behind strategically raised champagne flutes. If you're watching this story unfold and thinking Maya's about to break, think again. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this ends. "The divorce papers," Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Where are they?" Ethan pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, relief washing over his features. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. My lawyer is here. We can get your signature tonight and minimize the drama for everyone involved." Maya took the envelope with hands that didn't shake despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. She opened it carefully, scanning the legal language she'd once studied in the business law courses she'd taken before meeting Ethan, before sacrificing her PhD program to become the wife Caroline had spent 3 years trying to mold her into. "The settlement is quite fair," a thin man in an expensive suit said, materializing at Ethan's elbow. $50,000 plus 6 months of health insurance for you and the child. Mr. Ashford is also willing to provide child support of $2,000 per month until— "I don't want it," Maya interrupted. The lawyer blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Any of it. The settlement, the health insurance, the child support." Maya looked up from the papers, meeting Ethan's eyes for the first time since this nightmare began. "I don't want a single dollar of Ashford money." Caroline laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, please. That's the gold digger's last gambit, isn't it? Pretend you don't want anything so we'll feel guilty and give you more. I wasn't born yesterday, dear. I'm not pretending." Maya set the papers on a nearby table, her movements deliberate and precise. "I'll sign the divorce papers gladly. I'll waive all financial support. I'll walk out of this house tonight with nothing but what I came with 3 years ago." "Maya, don't be stupid," Ethan said, frustration creeping into his voice. "You have no job, no family. You're 8 months pregnant. At least take the settlement. I'm not trying to leave you destitute. You're just trying to leave me." The simple truth of it hung in the air between them. Ethan had the grace to look uncomfortable, at least, though Alexandra's grip on his arm tightened possessively. "I have one condition," Maya continued, her voice carrying through the ballroom with unexpected strength. "I want everyone here to know why this marriage is ending. I want the truth on record." Caroline's eyes narrowed dangerously. "The truth is already on record. You're a fortune hunter who got caught." "The truth," Maya said, "is that I loved your son. That I gave up my PhD program, my career aspirations, my own identity to become the woman you demanded I be. That I've spent 3 years being reshaped and criticized and molded into someone I don't recognize anymore. And that despite all of it, despite changing everything about myself, it still wasn't enough." She turned to address the crowd directly, her voice never wavering despite the tears she refused to let fall. "I met Ethan in a coffee shop near Berkeley. I was studying for my doctoral exams in international business. He said he loved that I didn't know who his family was, that I treated him like a regular person instead of a walking trust fund. He pursued me for 6 months before I agreed to go out with him." "How romantic," Alexandra muttered. Caroline shot her a silencing look. I thought we were building something real, Maya continued. I thought when I got pregnant, it was the happiest day of both our lives. Ethan, you cried. Do you remember? You said you'd never been so happy, that you couldn't wait to be a father. Ethan's face flushed, but he said nothing. So yes, I'll sign your papers. I'll walk away from the Ashford name and the Ashford money and the Ashford world that never wanted me in the first place. But I want everyone here to know that I'm not leaving because I got caught doing something wrong. I'm leaving because staying would mean teaching my daughter that love means erasing yourself to please other people. Maya picked up a pen from the table, signed the divorce papers with steady hands, and set them down with a finality that seemed to echo through the ballroom. There. It's done. The gold digger is divorcing the wealthy family. I'm sure that's an interesting twist for your social circle to gossip about. She started toward the ballroom's double doors, her head high despite the whispers erupting in her wake. Each step felt like walking through deep water, her swollen belly throwing off her balance, her borrowed heels pinching feet that had swollen from 8 months of pregnancy. Maya, wait. The voice came from behind her. An older gentleman she recognized as Judge Morrison, one of Caroline's longtime friends. You can't just leave. Where will you go? That's not your concern, Harold. Caroline's voice was sharp. She made her choice. Maya paused at the doorway, one hand on the ornate brass handle. Actually, I have somewhere to go. I have family. You told Ethan you had no family, Caroline said triumphantly. Another lie, I presume? Not a lie, an omission. Maya turned back, and for the first time since this ordeal began, she smiled. I told Ethan I was estranged from my family. That was true. I told him I didn't want to discuss them. Also true. What I didn't tell him was why. Something in her tone made the crowd lean forward, sensing a shift in the narrative they'd been witnessing. My family, Maya said carefully, has certain expectations, certain standards. When I was 22, I decided I wanted to live on my own terms, make my own way, find someone who loved me for myself, rather than for what my family name could provide. So I stopped using that name. I enrolled in graduate school under my mother's maiden name, Chen, instead of my father's name. I rented a studio apartment in Berkeley and worked 3 jobs to pay for it. I wanted to know what real life felt like for people who weren't born into extraordinary wealth. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, frozen in place like actors in a paused film. I met Ethan while I was conducting that experiment in normal life, Maya continued. And I fell in love with him honestly, genuinely, believing he was different from the men my family had pushed me toward. Men who wanted access to business connections and social status and inherited power. Caroline's face had gone pale beneath her expertly applied makeup. What are you saying? I'm saying that the prenup you're so proud of, the one designed to protect Ashford assets from a gold digger, is actually protecting me. Because California is a community property state, and without that prenup, Ethan would be entitled to half of everything I brought to this marriage. You brought nothing to this marriage, Caroline snapped, but her voice lacked its earlier certainty. I brought myself. Maya Lynn Chen. She let the full name hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Daughter of David Chen and Elena Lin. Granddaughter of Chen Wei Ming. The reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. Judge Morrison's mouth fell open in undisguised shock. Chen Wei Ming, he repeated. Of Chen Industries? And Lin Properties and Pacific Ventures Capital, and about 40 other corporations my grandfather built from nothing after immigrating from Taiwan in 1960. Maya's smile was sharp now, cutting through the pretense that had defined her life for 3 years. Current combined assets of approximately $18 billion at last count, though it fluctuates with the market. Ethan had gone absolutely white. That's impossible. You were a graduate student. You worked as a barista. Because I wanted to. Because I wanted to understand how most people actually live. Because my grandfather, who built his fortune with his own hands, believes that wealth without understanding is just privilege. Maya looked at Caroline directly. He would have been very interested to meet you, Caroline. He has strong opinions about people who inherit everything and build nothing. This is absurd, Caroline said, but her voice shook. If you're really Chen Wei-ming's granddaughter, why would you live like you did? Why would you marry Ethan without telling him? Because I wanted to be loved for myself. And for 3 years, I convinced myself that I was. Maya's hand moved to her belly again, feeling her daughter's movements. But I see now that Ethan fell in love with the idea of rescuing me, of being my wealthy savior. The reality of who I actually am would have changed everything between us. It would have made our entire relationship a lie. You lied to me, Ethan said, finding his voice finally. For 3 years, you lied about who you are. I omitted information about my family's wealth. You assumed I had nothing because I lived modestly. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. There's a difference, Ethan. I never claimed to be poor. I never asked you for money. I never used your wealth for anything. In fact, if you check your accounts, you'll find I've never spent $1 of Ashford money on myself. Everything I wore, everything I used, everything I needed, I paid for it myself from my own trust fund distributions. Alexandra had released Ethan's arm and taken a step back, her face calculating behind her perfectly applied makeup. The whispers in the crowd had become a roar of shocked conversation. Several people had their phones out, presumably Googling Chen Industries to verify Maya's claims. 18 billion, Judge Morrison said slowly, as if testing the words. Good God, Caroline. Do you have any idea what you've just done? I've protected my family from a artist, Caroline shot back, but her conviction was crumbling visibly. You've publicly humiliated one of the wealthiest women in America at a charity gala attended by 200 witnesses. Judge Morrison's voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent 40 years on the bench. And if I'm not mistaken, you did it while she was 8 months pregnant with your grandchild. The word grandchild seemed to hit Caroline like cold water. Her eyes went to Maya's belly, then to Ethan's face, then back to Maya with something that might have been panic. My lawyers will be very interested in tonight's events, Maya said quietly. Particularly the parts about publicly calling me a gold digger, forcing me out of my home while heavily pregnant, and attempting to coerce me into signing away my rights under duress. California has strong protections for pregnant women, as I'm sure you'll discover. Maya, please. Ethan stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Can we talk about this privately? This is all a misunderstanding. No, Ethan. This is exactly what it appears to be. You and your mother decided I wasn't good enough to be in Ashford. You're right. I'm not. Because being in Ashford, as I've learned over the past 3 years, means valuing appearances over substance, wealth over character, and social status over genuine human connection. Maya pulled her phone from her clutch, a simple smartphone she'd owned since before meeting Ethan, not the latest iPhone Caroline had tried to force on her, and made a call. David, I'm ready for pickup at the Ashford Estate. Yes, everything went as expected. No, I'm fine. The baby's fine. We'll be home soon. Who's David? Caroline demanded. My head of security. He's been parked outside for the past hour, waiting for this event to conclude exactly as I knew it would. Maya ended the call and looked around the ballroom one last time. I want to thank you all for bearing witness tonight. When my daughter asks me someday why I left her father, I'll be able to tell her that I did it in front of 200 of San Francisco's most prominent citizens, and not one of them stood up to say what was happening to me was wrong. The accusation hung heavy in the air. Several people had the grace to look ashamed, but no one spoke in her defense. That's the world you've chosen to raise your children in, Maya said to Ethan. A world where cruelty is acceptable as long as it's performed with proper etiquette and expensive champagne. I won't raise my daughter in that world. A black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the circular driveway, visible through the ballroom's French doors. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out, moving with the efficient precision of professional security. Goodbye, Ethan. I did love you. I hope someday you understand what you've lost tonight. Not the money, but the chance to be someone better than your parents raised you to be. Maya walked out of the Ashford Estate with her head high, her hand protective over her belly, leaving behind a ballroom full of people who would spend years dissecting this moment. Behind her, she heard Caroline's voice raised in panic, Ethan's confused attempts to understand what had just happened, Alexandra's calculating questions about what this meant for their relationship. None of it mattered anymore. David held the car door open, his weathered face showing no emotion. Home, Miss Chen? Home, Maya confirmed, settling into the leather seat with relief. And David? Call my grandfather. Tell him it's time to stop hiding. I'm ready to come back. As the Mercedes pulled away from the estate, Maya allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. Through the rear window, she could see the ballroom in chaos. Caroline on her phone, undoubtedly calling lawyers. Ethan standing frozen in the center of the room. Guests clustered in animated conversation. They'd called her a gold digger. They'd humiliated her publicly. They'd tried to cast her out with nothing. Instead, they'd just freed her from the last chains of pretense that had bound her for 3 years. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandfather. I've been waiting 3 years for this call. Welcome home, little dragon. Your mother is already preparing the nursery. Maya smiled, resting her hand on her belly where her daughter kicked with increasing vigor, as if sensing that something fundamental had shifted in their world. The gold digger had just revealed herself to be the billionaire. And tomorrow morning, when the full weight of Chen Industries' legal team descended on the Ashfords, they would discover exactly what it meant to underestimate the quiet ones. The Mercedes glided through San Francisco's streets, heading toward Pacific Heights and the Chen family compound that Maya hadn't seen in 3 years. The city lights blurred through her tears, not tears of sadness, but of relief and liberation, and the terrifying freedom of finally being herself again. Behind her, in the Ashford Estate, Caroline Ashford was discovering that her social standing had just taken a catastrophic hit. Because $18 billion commanded more respect than old San Francisco money, and publicly humiliating the granddaughter of Chen Wei-ming was the kind of mistake that ended careers, destroyed reputations, and permanently altered power dynamics. Maya had spent 3 years being someone else. Tonight, she'd reclaimed her identity in the most spectacular way possible. And tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. The story of the humble wife who turned out to be tech royalty was just beginning to circulate through social media, text messages, and phone calls. By morning, it would be everywhere. By evening, the Ashfords' phone would be ringing off the hook with apologies, requests for meetings, desperate attempts to mitigate the damage. But Maya wouldn't be taking those calls. She'd be home with her family, preparing for her daughter's arrival, and planning the next chapter of a life that was finally, truly hers again. The gold digger had revealed herself to be the billionaire, and the city would never forget it. The Chen family compound occupied 6 acres of prime Pacific Heights real estate, hidden behind stone walls and ancient oak trees that had been there long before David Chen bought the property in 1975. Maya had grown up running through these gardens, studying in the library her grandfather had built, learning business principles at the dinner table from conversations between titans of industry and finance. She'd forgotten how much she missed it. The Mercedes passed through security gates that recognized the car's signature without requiring identification. David pulled up to the main house's entrance, where warm light spilled from windows that Maya remembered staring out as a teenager, wondering if anywhere in the world existed where people weren't obsessed with money and power and social positioning. She'd found that place, briefly, in a Berkeley coffee shop. She'd been wrong about it being real. Her mother stood on the front steps, elegant in simple silk pants and a cashmere sweater, her dark hair showing threads of silver that hadn't been there 3 years ago. Elena Chen had built Lin Properties from a small real estate office into a billion-dollar empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and an uncanny ability to predict market trends. She'd cried the day Maya announced she was getting married, and again the day Maya told her she wasn't invited to the wedding. "Maya," Elena said simply, opening her arms. Maya climbed the steps carefully, her pregnant belly making her movements awkward, and fell into her mother's embrace. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood wrapped around her, like coming home. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered against her mother's shoulder. "I'm so sorry for everything." "Hush. You're home now. That's all that matters." Elena pulled back to study Maya's face, her expert eye cataloging every change, every line of stress and exhaustion. "We have so much to discuss. But first, let's get you settled. The nursery is ready, and Dr. Kim is on call for when the baby decides to make her entrance." "You prepared a nursery?" "The moment you told us you were pregnant, your grandfather had contractors working around the clock." Elena guided Maya inside, through the marble foyer that Maya had taken for granted as a child. He said no great-grandchild of his would enter the world without a proper welcome. The house smelled like home, furniture polish, fresh flowers from the greenhouse, and something baking in the kitchen that made Maya's stomach growl despite the emotional turmoil of the past hour. "Is grandfather still awake?" "Waiting in the library. He's been pacing for the past 2 hours." Elena smiled with fond exasperation. "You know how he gets when things are in motion." Chen Wei-Ming sat in his favorite leather chair, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions and business journals spanning 6 decades. At 84, he remained sharp as the day he'd negotiated his first major acquisition, his mind a steel trap that never forgot a face, a name, or a slight. He looked up when Maya entered, and his stern expression crumbled into something softer. "Little dragon," he said in Mandarin, using her childhood nickname. "You've come back to us." Maya crossed the room and knelt beside his chair, ignoring the protest from her swollen ankles. "I'm sorry I stayed away so long, Yeye. You needed to learn." He touched her face with a gentleness that would have shocked his business rivals. "And now you have learned. The Ashfords? Exactly as foolish as you predicted." Old money usually is. They think because their great-grandfather made something, they deserve respect. They forget that respect must be earned in every generation. Chen Wei-Ming switched to English, his accent barely noticeable after 60 years in America. "Tell me what happened." Maya recounted the evening's events while her grandfather listened in silence, his face betraying nothing. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "This divorce," he said finally. "You want it?" "Yes." "You loved him?" I thought I did. But I loved the man I thought he was, not the man he actually is. There's a difference. Chen Wei-ming nodded slowly. Your grandmother said the same thing about her first husband. Before she met me, she was married to a man who loved the idea of her, but not the reality. It takes wisdom to know the difference. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the gardens where Maya had played as a child. The Ashfords will come begging. They'll want to apologize, to repair the relationship, to maintain some connection to Chen Industries. I know. What do you want me to do about it? Maya considered the question carefully. Revenge would be easy. Chen Industries had the power to destroy the Ashford Foundation's corporate partnerships, to freeze them out of social circles, to make their lives miserable in 1,000 subtle ways. One phone call from her grandfather could accomplish more damage than a dozen lawsuits. Nothing, she said finally. Let them live with what they've done. Let Caroline explain to her friends why she publicly humiliated a pregnant woman. Let Ethan figure out how to co-parent with someone whose family could buy his entire company without noticing the expense. And the grandchild? My daughter will know her father if he wants to be part of her life. But on my terms, not his. She'll be raised Chen, not Ashford. She'll learn what you taught me. That wealth is responsibility, not privilege. That respect is earned, not inherited. That character matters more than social standing. Chen Wei-ming smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. You sound like me. It's terrifying. Is that a compliment? The highest I can give. He returned to his chair, settling into it with the careful movements of someone whose body no longer quite obeyed his will. Tomorrow, we'll discuss your return to Chen Industries. Your PhD research on emerging markets in Southeast Asia, it's needed now more than ever. We're planning expansion into Vietnam, and I want someone I trust leading the initiative. Grandfather, I'm about to have a baby. Yes. And after you recover, you'll have work that matters. Work you're qualified for. Work that uses your brain instead of asking you to shrink yourself to fit someone else's limited vision. His eyes were fierce. The Ashfords wanted you small, Maya. I want you to be exactly as large as you're meant to be. Maya felt tears threaten again. But these were different from the ones she'd fought in the Ashford ballroom. I've missed this. Missed you. Missed feeling like I could be myself. Then stay yourself from now on. No more hiding, no more pretending. Let the world see Maya Lin Chen in all her complicated, brilliant glory. Elena appeared in the doorway, carrying a tea tray. Enough business for tonight. Maya needs rest, and you need to stop working. She fixed her father with a look that hadn't changed since she was a teenager. Doctor's orders, remember? Doctors are overly cautious, Chen Wei-ming grumbled. But he accepted the tea Elena poured for him. But fine. Maya, your rooms are prepared. The entire East Wing, so you'll have privacy and space for the baby. Tomorrow, we'll discuss everything else. Maya stood, pressing a kiss to her grandfather's forehead before following her mother upstairs. The East Wing had been her domain as a teenager, and walking into it now felt like stepping back in time. Except everything had been updated. A nursery connected to the master bedroom, painted in soft greens and yellows, with hand-carved furniture her grandfather had clearly commissioned specially. It's beautiful, Maya whispered, running her fingers over the crib's detailed woodwork. He wanted it perfect. Elena stood in the doorway, her expression soft. When you left 3 years ago, he said you'd come back when you were ready. That we had to trust you to find your own path. It nearly killed him to wait. I needed to know I could make it on my own. That I wasn't just Chen Wei-ming's granddaughter. That I had value beyond the family name. And now? Now I know that the family name isn't a burden. It's armor. And I've been fighting without it for too long. Maya's phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out, surprised to see a text from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Judge Morrison. I got your number from the event registry. I want to apologize for not speaking up tonight. What Caroline did was unconscionable. If you need a character witness for any legal proceedings, I'm available." Maya showed the message to her mother, who smiled grimly. "It begins. Tomorrow your phone will be full of apologies from people who stood silent tonight." "Should I respond?" "That depends. Do you want their apologies? Or do you want them to understand what their silence enabled?" Maya thought about the ballroom full of people who'd watched her humiliation without intervening. About the society that valued propriety over decency, appearances over truth. She typed back, "Thank you, Judge Morrison. I'll remember who spoke up when it mattered, and who didn't." More messages arrived as the night progressed. Guests from the gala reaching out with variations of, "I had no idea," and "If I'd known who you were," and "Please forgive me for not intervening." Each one a confession that their moral compass required wealth to activate. That they'd stood silent watching a pregnant woman's humiliation because they'd believed she didn't matter. Elena read over Maya's shoulder, her expression darkening with each message. They're not apologizing for their behavior. They're apologizing for not recognizing your status. I know. It's exactly what I expected. Maya silenced her phone and set it aside. Grandfather was right. Some lessons you can only learn by experiencing them yourself. Over the next week, the story of Maya's revelation spread through San Francisco society like wildfire. The society pages exploded with speculation. Tech blogs analyzed Chen Industries' holdings. Business journals dug up old interviews with Chen Wei-Ming discussing his granddaughter's decision to pursue graduate studies under her mother's maiden name. The Ashford Foundation's phones rang constantly with calls from corporate partners, suddenly reassessing their commitments. 3 board members resigned. 2 major donors withdrew their support, citing concerns about the foundation's leadership. Caroline Ashford's fall from social grace was swift and brutal. Invitations dried up. Her friends suddenly became unavailable for lunch dates. The charity committees that had once begged for her participation politely suggested she step down to focus on family matters. Ethan called Maya 17 times in 3 days. She didn't answer. When he showed up at the Chen compound, security turned him away with professional courtesy and absolute firmness. He sent flowers, letters, texts that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. Maya ignored all of it. She had more important things to focus on, like the daughter who decided to make her entrance into the world at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks early, but perfectly healthy. If you're still watching and your heart is racing, wondering how this all ends, you absolutely need to subscribe and turn on notifications. The justice that's about to be delivered is going to be legendary. Drop a comment telling me whose side you're on. Hit that like button if you're Team Maya all the way. Sophia Lynn Chen arrived weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes. She was perfect. Maya held her daughter in the hospital's private suite, paid for by Chen Industries, staffed by the best medical team money could hire, and felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. You're going to grow up knowing who you are, Maya whispered to the tiny person in her arms. You're going to be surrounded by people who love you for yourself. You're never going to have to hide or shrink or pretend to be someone you're not to deserve love. Her mother sat in the chair beside the bed, watching with the soft expression Maya remembered from her own childhood. She looks like you did. Same determined chin, same way of staring at the world like she's already figuring out how to run it. Grandfather will be insufferable. He's already planning her first board meeting. Elena smiled. But he wants to wait until she can hold her head up on her own. Very considerate of him. The hospital room's door opened after a soft knock. David, the head of security, entered with the apologetic expression of someone delivering unwelcome news. Miss Chen, Mr. Ashford is in the lobby. He says he has a right to see his daughter. He's threatening to call his lawyers if we don't let him up. Maya looked down at Sophia, who was sleeping peacefully against her chest. Did he come alone? No, ma'am. His mother is with him. And the young woman from the gala, Miss Alexandra. Elena's expression hardened. They brought the mistress to meet the baby? Apparently Miss Alexandra is now Mrs. Ashford. They were married yesterday at City Hall, according to the marriage announcement in the Chronicle. Maya laughed, the sound surprising even herself. He married her. Less than 2 weeks after our divorce was finalized, he married the woman he claimed to barely know. Does that hurt? Her mother asked gently. No. It clarifies. He didn't want a partner, he wanted an accessory. Someone who'd look good on his arm and never challenge him or his mother's vision of what an Ashford wife should be. Alexandra can have that role. I'm done auditioning for it. Do you want to see them? Maya considered. Ethan was Sophia's father, regardless of what had happened between them. And despite everything, she'd meant what she said about co-parenting. Her daughter deserved to know her father, if he wanted to be part of her life. Let him come up, alone. Tell Caroline and Alexandra they'll need to wait for a different day. David nodded and left. 5 minutes later, Ethan Ashford walked into the room looking haggard and nervous. He'd lost weight since the gala, and his expensive clothes hung on him awkwardly, as if he'd dressed without really paying attention to what he was putting on. Maya, he said, stopping in the doorway. His eyes went to the baby in her arms, and something shifted in his expression. Is that your daughter, Sophia Lynn Chen? Born at 3:47 this morning, 7 pounds 2 ounces, healthy and perfect. Ethan took a step closer, then another, moving like a man approaching something sacred and breakable. When he reached the bedside, Maya saw tears on his face. She's beautiful, he whispered. Can I hold her? Maya hesitated, then carefully transferred Sophia into Ethan's arms. He held her with surprising gentleness, supporting her head properly, cradling her against his chest like she was made of glass. She has your nose, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And your hair. And your eyes. Blue like your mother's. They were both quiet for a moment, watching Sophia sleep through the transfer with the enviable peace of newborns who hadn't yet learned about complicated family dynamics. I married Alexandra, Ethan said finally, not looking up from his daughter's face. I heard. Congratulations. Don't. Please. He looked up, meeting Maya's eyes. It was a mistake. Everything that happened, everything I did, it was all a mistake. My mother convinced me you were after our money, and I believed her because it was easier than confronting the truth. What truth? That I was terrified of you, of how smart you are, how capable, how you never needed me to rescue you or complete you or give your life meaning. You had your own identity, your own goals, your own strength, and instead of appreciating that, I resented it. Maya was quiet, processing his words. You wanted me dependent on you. I wanted to feel necessary, like I was providing something you couldn't provide for yourself. Ethan gently rocked Sophia, the motion instinctive. When you dropped out of your PhD program to focus on being my wife, I told myself you were happier that way. That you'd chosen me over your career because what we had was more important. But I chose you because your mother made it clear I couldn't be both. Couldn't be a doctoral student and an Ashford wife. The two identities were incompatible in her worldview. I know. I see that now. I see a lot of things now. He carefully returned Sophia to Maya's arms. My mother has been calling you a gold digger for 3 years, planting seeds of doubt, pointing out every way you didn't fit her image of what I needed. And I let her. I let her reshape you until you weren't Maya Chen anymore. You were just the version of you that passed her inspection. Why are you telling me this? Ethan sat down in the chair across from the bed, his shoulders slumping. Because you deserve to know that I understand what I did. I erased you. I took a brilliant, ambitious woman and convinced her to make herself smaller so I could feel bigger. And when you finally stood up and showed everyone who you really were, I couldn't handle it. So you married someone else within 2 weeks. So I married someone who will actually let my mother control her, who won't challenge me or push back or remind me that I'm not the smartest person in the room. Ethan laughed bitterly. Alexandra is exactly what my mother wanted. Beautiful, agreeable, content to be ornamental. The perfect Ashford wife. Then why do you sound so miserable? Because she's not you. Because I threw away something extraordinary for something easy. Because my daughter is going to grow up knowing her father chose wrong, repeatedly and spectacularly. Maya looked down at Sophia, who was stirring against her chest, making small sounds of displeasure that would shortly become hungry cries. Ethan, I'm willing to co-parent with you. Sophia deserves to know her father. But I need you to understand something. I'm not the woman you married anymore. That Maya Chen who tried to fit herself into your world is gone. The woman sitting here is the real me. Complicated, ambitious, exactly as large as my grandfather raised me to be. I know. And I won't shrink myself again. Not for you, not for your mother, not for anyone. If you want to be part of Sophia's life, you're going to have to deal with Maya Lin Chen, heir to Chen Industries, in all her uncomfortable, challenging, uncompromising reality. I understand. Do you? Because your mother is downstairs right now with your new wife, expecting to be welcomed into my daughter's life. And that's not going to happen, Ethan. Caroline Ashford publicly humiliated me while I was 8 months pregnant. She called me a gold digger in front of 200 people. She tried to force me into a disadvantageous settlement while I was vulnerable and alone. I'm not required to forgive that. I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm asking you to let me be Sophia's father. Maya studied his face, looking for the man she'd fallen in love with in that Berkeley coffee shop. She could see traces of him there beneath the exhaustion and regret. Supervised visits initially. My family's estate, once a week. We'll see how it goes from there. That's fair. More than fair, actually. Ethan stood, moving toward the door. Maya, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. For standing up to us. For showing me exactly how wrong I was. For being the kind of person who'll raise our daughter to be strong and uncompromising. I wish I'd appreciated that when we were married. After he left, Elena emerged from the adjoining room where she'd been discreetly giving them privacy. That went better than expected. He's not a bad person, Maya said thoughtfully. He's just weak. And weakness surrounded by people like Caroline turns into cruelty. Will you really let him be part of Sophia's life? of course. She deserves a father. And maybe, Maya paused, considering. Maybe seeing who I really am, watching me parent our daughter without apology or compromise, will help him become someone better, someone stronger. Or maybe he'll resent you more. Then that's his problem, not mine. I spent 3 years making myself smaller to accommodate his insecurities. I'm done with that now. Sophia chose that moment to announce her hunger with impressive lung capacity. Maya shifted her, prepared to nurse, and felt her mother's hand on her shoulder. Your grandmother would have loved this. Loved seeing you come into your power. I miss her every day. She knew you'd find your way back. She told me, right, before she died? Maya has a steel spine beneath all that gentleness. When the world pushes her far enough, she'll push back twice as hard. She was right. Maya looked down at her daughter, at the tiny person who'd inadvertently been the catalyst for her mother's transformation. Sophia is going to grow up knowing she comes from a line of strong women. Women who built empires, who survived betrayals, who refused to make themselves smaller for anyone's comfort. And hopefully, Elena added with a smile, women with better taste in men than their mothers and grandmothers showed initially. God, I hope so. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and those strange twilight hours where everything felt both overwhelming and precious. Maya moved through new motherhood surrounded by family support. Her mother handled business calls while Maya nursed. Her grandfather sat in the nursery holding Sophia for hours while Maya slept. A rotating staff of household employees helped with everything from laundry to midnight bottle preparation when Maya's body needed rest from nursing. It was a different kind of privilege than she'd experienced at the Ashford Estate. There, staff had been invisible, present but unacknowledged, there to maintain Caroline's vision of effortless perfection. Here, the household staff were family. Many of them had worked for Chen Ming for decades, had watched Maya grow up, had opinions about how she should be raising her daughter that they weren't shy about sharing. She needs more tummy time, Mrs. Kim, the head housekeeper, announced one afternoon, finding Maya nursing Sophia in the library. She just ate. She'll spit up if I put her down too soon. Then hold her upright for 15 minutes. Then tummy time. Baby's neck needs strengthening. Maya smiled, accepting the criticism with grace. This was what family felt like. People who cared enough to tell you when you were wrong, who stuck around even when you were at your worst, who loved you despite knowing every flaw and mistake. Ethan visited every Saturday afternoon, arriving precisely at 2 p.m. and staying for exactly 2 hours. He always came alone, despite Caroline's repeated requests to be included. He'd hold Sophia, sing to her awkwardly, read board books with concentrated attention. And he'd talk to Maya about his work, about Alexandra's attempts to replicate Caroline's social calendar, about his growing understanding of what he'd lost. My mother is in therapy, he announced during the 4th visit. Court-ordered, technically, part of the settlement agreement. Maya looked up from folding baby clothes. What settlement? The one my lawyers negotiated with your lawyers after Judge Morrison filed a formal complaint about her behavior at the gala. Ethan shifted Sophia to his other arm. Apparently calling someone a gold digger while they're bare 8 months pregnant in front of 200 witnesses constitutes intentional infliction of emotional distress. Who knew? I didn't ask my lawyers to pursue that. Your grandfather did, and his lawyers are significantly more aggressive than mine. Ethan smiled wryly. The settlement requires her to issue a public apology, attend therapy, and make a substantial donation to charities supporting pregnant women facing homelessness or domestic abuse. Your grandfather's choice of charities, naturally. That sounds like him. He called me personally to explain that people who publicly humiliate his granddaughter face consequences. It was the most polite threat I've ever received. Ethan looked down at Sophia. I don't think he likes me very much. He doesn't dislike you. He's disappointed in you. There's a difference. Is there? You had everything. Wealth, education, opportunity, a wife who loved you genuinely. And you squandered it because you were too insecure to appreciate what you had. That's disappointing, not hate-worthy. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You're very generous with me, more generous than I deserve. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for Sophia. She deserves parents who can be civil, who can co-parent effectively, who don't use her as a weapon against each other. How's Alexandra handling all this? Maya paused in her folding. Why would I know how Alexandra is handling anything? Because you sent her flowers and a note. She showed me. Maya remembered the impulse that had struck her 3 weeks ago, watching Ethan struggle through a feeding that resulted in more spit up on his shoulder than milk in the baby. She'd thought about Alexandra. Young, probably terrified, suddenly married to a man with a newborn daughter and a bitter ex-wife from a far more powerful family. I sent flowers to welcome her to San Francisco society. It seemed like the right thing to do. The note said, being an Ashford wife is harder than it looks. I hope you find ways to stay yourself through it. And, she cried. Then she asked if she could meet you. Ethan looked up, his expression vulnerable. Alexandra grew up in foster care. She's been alone most of her life. I think she saw our wedding as security, stability, family. But Caroline treats her the same way she treated you, like a decorative asset to be managed and controlled. So she's discovering what I discovered. That marrying into the Ashford family means surrendering your identity to Caroline's vision of what's appropriate. Yes. And I think she's realizing she made a mistake. But she's trapped now. We're married. My mother is already planning elaborate anniversary parties, and walking away would mean going back to having nothing. Maya finished folding the last onesie and looked at Ethan directly. I'm not going to rescue her, Ethan. Or you. You both made choices. Choices that hurt me, that were designed to humiliate and discard me. Those choices have consequences. I know. I'm not asking you to rescue anyone. I'm asking, he paused, searching for words. I'm asking if you might consider eventually allowing Alexandra to be part of Sophia's life. Not as a stepmother. I know that's not appropriate. But as someone who'll be present at birthday parties and holidays, someone who might actually care about our daughter instead of seeing her as an obligation. That depends entirely on Alexandra. If she wants to meet me, have her contact me directly. No intermediaries, no Caroline orchestrating conversations, no you running interference. If she's brave enough to reach out herself, I'll consider it. Thank you. After Ethan left, Maya found her grandfather in his study, surrounded by documents relating to Chen Industries' planned expansion into Vietnam. He looked up when she entered, his sharp eyes immediately assessing her mood. The Ashford boy was here again. You don't have to call him that. He's 35, miss. He acts like a boy. Weak spine, no courage, lets his mother control his life. Chen Wei-Ming set down his pen. But he loves his daughter. I see that. Yes. Whatever his faults as a husband, he's trying to be a good father. And the new wife? Ethan says she wants to meet me. Brave or foolish? Sometimes difficult to tell the difference. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. We need to discuss your return to work. Maya settled into the leather chair, feeling Sophia's absence like a phantom weight she'd left her daughter sleeping in the nursery under Mrs. Kim's watchful eye. But her body still expected to be holding that small, warm presence. I'm not sure I'm ready to return to work. Sophia is barely 6 weeks old. I'm not suggesting you return tomorrow. I'm suggesting we begin planning your transition back to Chen Industries when you're ready. Chen Wei-Ming pulled out a folder. Your research on emerging markets in Southeast Asia. I've had our analysis team review it. Your predictions about Vietnam's tech sector were remarkably accurate. That research is 3 years old, grandfather, and still more insightful than anything my current team has produced. You have a gift, Maya. A mind that sees patterns others miss, that understands cultural nuances that pure financial analysis overlooks. Chen Industries needs that perspective, especially as we expand into new markets. Maya thought about her abandoned PhD research, the interviews she'd conducted with Vietnamese entrepreneurs, the analysis of how traditional family business structures were adapting to modern tech industry demands. She'd loved that work. The intellectual challenge, the synthesis of cultural understanding and business strategy, the feeling of contributing something meaningful. What exactly are you proposing? I want you to lead our Vietnam expansion initiative. Not as my granddaughter doing nepotism work, but as the most qualified person for the position. You'll have a team, a budget, and complete autonomy to build something remarkable. And Sophia? Bring her. The Hanoi office has excellent childcare facilities, or work remotely when you need to. Chen Industries survived the Depression, 2 world wars, and countless recessions. We can certainly adapt to accommodate one brilliant executive who happens to also be a new mother. Maya felt something unfurl in her chest, ambition she'd suppressed for 3 years while trying to fit into the Ashford wife mold. When would this start? That's entirely up to you. 3 months, 6 months, a year? The position will be waiting whenever you're ready. Chen Wei-Ming leaned back in his chair. I built Chen Industries for family, Maya. For you, for Sophia, for the generations that come after. I don't want you working yourself into exhaustion trying to prove you're capable. I already know you're capable. I want you working because you love it, because it challenges you, because building something meaningful is in your blood. The way it was in yours? Exactly. We're not content to just maintain wealth, little dragon. We want to create, expand, improve. It's what we do. Maya thought about Sophia sleeping upstairs, about the future stretching before them both, about teaching her daughter that women could be brilliant and ambitious and maternal all at once, that success didn't require choosing between career and family, that the right workplace accommodated life rather than demanding life accommodate work. I'd like to start planning the transition, not implementation yet, but research, team building, preliminary analysis, something I can work on during nap times and midnight feedings. Chen Wei-Ming's smile was fierce with approval. That's my granddaughter, never content to rest when there's work to be done. Alexandra Ashford, née Mitchell, briefly Deloqua, now attached to a name she'd schemed to acquire, sat in the uncomfortable chair outside Maya Chen's office, trying not to look as nervous as she felt. The Chen Industries building occupied an entire block in San Francisco's financial district, all glass and steel and intimidating modernity. The receptionist who'd greeted her had been polite but distant, the kind of professional courtesy that came with excellent training and zero warmth. She'd debated this meeting for 3 weeks. Ethan had given her Maya's direct contact information, but actually using it required courage Alexandra wasn't sure she possessed. In the end, it was Caroline's latest criticism about her hair, her clothes, her voice, her posture, her everything, that pushed Alexandra to finally send the email. Ms. Chen will see you now. the receptionist said, gesturing toward massive double doors. Alexandra stood, smoothing her dress. A conservative navy sheath that Caroline had insisted was appropriate for meeting someone of Maya's status. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was dressing to impress the woman she'd helped humiliate 6 weeks ago. Maya's office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, modern furniture that managed to be both functional and artistic, walls lined with photographs of construction projects and manufacturing facilities. And behind a sleek desk sat Maya Chen, looking nothing like the pregnant woman Alexandra remembered from the gala. "Ms. Ashford, thank you for coming." Maya gestured to the seating area near the windows, rather than the more formal desk chairs. "Can I offer you anything? Coffee, tea, water?" "No, thank you." Alexandra perched on the edge of the sofa, her posture perfect from years of pageant training. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "Of course." "Your email was intriguing." Maya settled into the opposite chair with easy grace. "You said you wanted to apologize." "Yes." "For everything. For the gala. For my part in what happened. For—" Alexandra's voice cracked. "For being cruel to someone who didn't deserve it." Maya was quiet for a moment, studying Alexandra with intelligent eyes. "Why were you cruel to me, Alexandra?" "Because I thought you were what Caroline said you were. A gold digger, a nobody, someone who'd trapped Ethan with a pregnancy. And because being cruel to you made me feel powerful in a world where I usually feel powerless." "That's remarkably honest. You asked for truth." "That's the truth." Alexandra twisted her hands in her lap. "I grew up with nothing, Ms. Chen. Foster care, group homes, aging out of the system at 18 with no family and no support. When I met Ethan, I saw everything I'd ever wanted. Security, belonging, a place in the world where I mattered. I didn't care that he was married. I didn't care that you were pregnant. I just wanted what you had. And now you have it. You're Mrs. Ashford, living in that Pacific Heights mansion, attending all the same events I used to attend. Congratulations." There was no malice in Maya's tone. But Alexandra heard the judgment anyway. "Now I understand why you left. Why you walked out of that gala with your head high and didn't look back. Tell me." "Because being an Ashford wife means disappearing. Means becoming whatever Caroline needs you to be. Decorative, agreeable, silent. Means surrendering everything that makes you yourself in exchange for security and social status." Alexandra met Maya's eyes. "And I'm not strong enough to do what you did. I can't walk away because I have nowhere to go. You could leave Ethan, get a divorce, take the settlement, build your own life. Could I? I'm 26 with no college degree, no work history beyond acting gigs and modeling jobs, and no family to fall back on. The settlement would last a few years if I was careful. And then what? I'd be right back where I started. Except now, everyone would know me as the woman who married Ethan Ashford for 6 months and took his money." Maya was quiet, and Alexandra felt tears threaten. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry, wouldn't beg for sympathy or understanding. But sitting across from the woman she'd helped destroy, facing the reality of her own choices, was harder than she'd anticipated. "I didn't come here to ask for your forgiveness," Alexandra said finally. "I don't deserve that. And I'm not presumptuous enough to expect it. I came because you're the only person who understands what I'm going through. You survived 3 years of being an Ashford wife. I'm 6 weeks in and already drowning. What do you want from me, Alexandra?" "I don't know. Advice, maybe? Or just acknowledgement that you see me struggling and understand why?" Alexandra laughed bitterly. "Caroline controls everything. What I wear, who I talk to, what events I attend, how I style my hair. Ethan tries to defend me sometimes, but he always backs down when his mother pushes back. I feel like I'm being erased, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of who I used to be. That's exactly what happened to me. Except I let it happen for 3 years before finding the courage to stop it. How did you do it? How did you walk away? Maya stood, moving to the windows overlooking the bay. I remembered who I was before I became Mrs. Ashford. I remembered that I had value beyond my relationship status, that my worth wasn't defined by whether Caroline approved of me. And I had family to return to, people who loved me unconditionally, who wanted me whole rather than diminished. She turned back to Alexandra. You don't have that safety net, which means your path forward is going to be harder than mine was. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Are you suggesting I leave, Ethan? I'm suggesting you figure out who Alexandra Mitchell is beneath all the survival mechanisms and people-pleasing. Maybe that woman wants to be married to Ethan Ashford. Maybe she doesn't. But you can't make that decision until you know who you actually are. Alexandra felt something shift in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just the beginning of courage. Would you be willing to meet with me again? Not as friends. I know I destroyed any chance of that. But as someone who's been where I am and survived? Maya considered the request for a long moment. On one condition, you be completely honest with me. No performance, no trying to say what you think I want to hear, no pretending to be someone you're not. If we're going to do this, I need to see the real Alexandra Mitchell, not the actress, not the Ashford wife, not the character you play to survive. The actual person underneath. I'm not sure I remember who that is. Then it's time to figure it out. Over the next 3 months, Alexandra became an unexpected fixture at the Chen compound. She'd arrive on Wednesday afternoons when Ethan was at his office, spending 2 hours with Maya discussing everything from Caroline's latest demands to Alexandra's abandoned dreams of serious acting, rather than the modeling work she'd been doing. Maya never let her forget what she'd done, the cruelty at the gala, the part she'd played in a pregnant woman's humiliation. But she also didn't punish Alexandra for those mistakes indefinitely. Instead, she pushed Alexandra to examine why she'd made those choices, what she'd believed would happen, how she'd justified participating in someone else's destruction. I thought if I helped them see you as the enemy, they'd see me as the ally, Alexandra admitted during one session. I thought making you smaller would make me bigger. Did it work? No. It just made me complicit in cruelty, and now I have to live with that. Alexandra looked down at her hands. Caroline treats me exactly the way she treated you. Maybe worse, because at least you had Ethan's love for a while. He married me to prove a point, and we both know it. Have you talked to him about this? How can I? He's drowning in his own regrets about losing you, about missing Sophia's first months, about realizing too late that he threw away something irreplaceable. The last thing he needs is his new wife complaining about the life he provided for her. Maya was quiet for a moment, watching Sophia play on the floor with soft blocks. At 3 months old, she was beginning to track objects with her eyes, to reach for toys with uncoordinated hands, to smile when her mother's face appeared above her. Alexandra, I'm going to say something you probably won't like. Okay. You need to leave Ethan. Not because of me. Not because of Sophia. Not because the marriage is making you miserable. You need to leave because staying is teaching you that you don't deserve better than this. I don't know if I do deserve better. Then that's the work you need to do. Figure out whether Alexandra Mitchell has value beyond what she can provide to other people. Whether she deserves love that doesn't require her to erase herself. whether she's worth fighting for. Alexandra felt tears slip down her cheeks. I've never been worth fighting for. Not to my parents who gave me up, not to the foster families who sent me back, not to anyone. Then prove them wrong. Prove that you're worth fighting for by fighting for yourself. The conversation stayed with Alexandra long after she left the Chen compound. That night, lying beside Ethan in the bed they shared, but rarely occupied simultaneously, his work keeping him late, her social obligations keeping her busy, she finally spoke the words that had been building for weeks. I want a divorce. Ethan rolled over to look at her, his face barely visible in the darkness. What? I want a divorce. This isn't working, Ethan. You're still in love with Maya. I'm miserable pretending to be someone I'm not. And your mother is making both of us miserable with her expectations and demands. Alexandra, please, let's talk about this. We are talking about this. I'm telling you, I can't do this anymore. I can't be Mrs. Ethan Ashford. I can't meet your mother's standards. I can't pretend this marriage was anything other than a mistake we both made. Ethan sat up, turning on the bedside lamp. Where will you go? What will you do? I don't know yet. But Maya offered to help me figure it out. She's willing to fund a college education if I want to go back to school, or acting classes if I want to pursue that seriously, or whatever else I decide I want to do with my life. Maya offered to help you? She understands what it's like to be erased by your family, to lose yourself trying to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be. And she doesn't want that happening to anyone else, even me, even the woman who helped destroy her marriage. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I've made so many mistakes. Yes, we both have, but we don't have to keep making them. Alexandra touched his hand gently. You deserve to find someone you actually love, Ethan. Someone who isn't just a replacement for what you lost. And I deserve to figure out who I am before I try to be someone's wife again. My mother is going to be furious. Your mother is always furious about something. Maybe it's time to stop letting that control your life. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later, conducted with far less drama than either of Ethan's previous marriages. Alexandra accepted a modest settlement that included funding for education and a small apartment in the city. Caroline threatened to cut Ethan off from the family fortune, then backed down when he pointed out that he'd already lost everything that mattered by listening to her advice. Maya watched from a distance as Alexandra slowly rebuilt her life. She enrolled in San Francisco State, studying business and psychology. She took acting classes at a respected conservatory. She made friends who didn't care about her brief stint as an Ashford wife. She figured out who Alexandra Mitchell was beneath all the survival mechanisms. And she stayed in touch with Maya, their relationship evolving into something neither of them had expected. Not quite friendship, but something like mentorship crossed with mutual respect. The woman who'd once spat cruelty at a pregnant stranger had become someone capable of self-reflection, growth, and genuine remorse. You didn't have to help her, Elena said one evening, watching Maya respond to one of Alexandra's texts about a psychology exam. She was complicit in everything that happened to you. I know. But I also know what it's like to be alone in the world, trying to survive the only way you know how. Alexandra made terrible choices, but she's trying to do better. That deserves acknowledgement. Your grandfather thinks you're too soft. My grandfather thinks everyone is too soft compared to him. Maya smiled. But I'd rather be accused of too much compassion than too much cruelty. Sophia stirred in her bassinet, making the small sounds that indicated she'd be fully awake and demanding food within minutes. Maya scooped her up, settling into the nursing chair while her daughter latched on with enthusiastic hunger. Have you thought about dating? Elena asked, settling into the nearby armchair. It's been 6 months since the divorce. You're allowed to consider the possibility of finding someone new. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Sophia takes all my energy. Work is consuming when I'm not with her. And honestly, I'm enjoying being just Maya Chen for a while. No one's wife, no one's girlfriend, just myself. Your grandfather would approve of that answer. Most of my answers are designed to get grandfather's approval. It's a hard habit to break. They sat in comfortable silence while Sophia nursed. The only sounds, the soft suckling and the distant city noises filtering through the windows. Maya thought about the path that had brought her here. The choices, the betrayals, the revelations that had transformed her life so completely. She'd walked into the Ashford Gala 6 months ago as a woman trying to be someone she wasn't. She'd walked out as exactly who she'd always been. Brilliant, capable, and unwilling to accept less than she deserved. The gold digger had revealed herself to be the billionaire. But more importantly, the woman hiding from her own power had revealed herself to be exactly as strong as her family had always known she was. And that, Maya thought as her daughter's eyes drifted closed with milk-drunk contentment, was the real story worth telling. 1 year after the gala that changed everything, Maya stood in the Chen Industries boardroom presenting her Vietnam expansion proposal to the executive team. Sophia sat in a car seat at the corner of the table, playing with soft blocks and occasionally babbling commentary that made the senior vice president smile. The Vietnamese tech sector represents a unique opportunity, Maya explained, clicking through her presentation. Traditional family business structures are adapting to modern startup culture in ways that create hybrid models worth studying. By establishing Chen Industries' presence now, we position ourselves as partners in that evolution, rather than outside observers trying to replicate Western models. Her grandfather watched from his position at the head of the table, his expression inscrutable. At 85, he'd officially retired from day-to-day operations. But everyone knew Chen Wei-ming would be involved in major decisions until the day he died. The initial investment is substantial, one of the VPs noted. 20 million in the first year alone. What's our ROI timeline? 3 to 5 years for profitability, 7 to 10 years for significant returns. This isn't a quick flip. It's a long-term strategic positioning. Maya met his skepticism head-on, which is exactly the kind of thinking that built Chen Industries in the first place. My grandfather didn't make decisions based on quarterly earnings. He made them based on generational impact. Chen Wei-ming's slight smile told her she'd said exactly the right thing. The vote was unanimous. Maya would lead the Vietnam initiative with full authority to build her team and implement her strategy. She'd split time between San Francisco and Hanoi, bringing Sophia with her, proving that women didn't have to choose between ambition and motherhood. They just needed companies smart enough to accommodate both. After the meeting, her grandfather pulled her aside. Your grandmother would be proud, and slightly terrified of how much you sound like me. He touched Sophia's cheek with gentle fingers. This little one will grow up seeing what real leadership looks like. That's the plan. The Ashford boy asked me for a meeting next week. Says he wants to discuss a business proposition. Should I take it? Maya considered. That depends. What's the proposition? A partnership between Morrison Technologies and Chen Industries on a renewable energy project. He's been working on solar panel innovation, thinks our manufacturing capabilities could help scale production. Is the project sound? Technically? Yes. His engineers are solid. Financially? Could be profitable with proper implementation. Personally? Chen Wei-ming's expression hardened. I don't trust him. You don't have to trust him personally to do business with him, grandfather. If the project is sound and the terms are fair, Chen Industries should evaluate it on its merits. You're more generous than I would be in your position. I'm pragmatic. Ethan made mistakes in our marriage, but he's still a capable businessman. And more importantly, he's Sophia's father. I'd rather maintain a professional relationship where possible than create unnecessary conflict that might affect her. Chen Wei-Ming studied her face for a long moment. When did you become so wise? I learned from the best. That evening, Maya returned to the Pacific Heights house she'd purchased for herself and Sophia. Not as grand as the Chen compound, not as ostentatious as the Ashford Estate, but perfect for their needs. 3 bedrooms, a home office, a nursery painted in soft yellows and greens, and a garden where Sophia could eventually play. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your presentation coverage in the Business Chronicle. Impressive. Congratulations on the Vietnam initiative, Alexandra. Maya smiled, typing back, Thank you. How's school going? Final exams next week. Terrified but excited. Got accepted into the Acting Conservatory's advanced program. Never thought I'd be here. Proud of you. Keep going. Later, after Sophia was asleep and the house was quiet, Maya stood at her bedroom window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Ethan was probably working late at Morrison Technologies, trying to build something meaningful to prove to himself and everyone else that he was more than his last name. Alexandra was likely studying for exams, building a life that was truly hers for the first time. Caroline was undoubtedly plotting to regain the social standing she'd lost when her cruelty was exposed. The city continued its endless churn of ambition and reinvention, everyone trying to become someone new or reclaim someone they used to be. But Maya Chen knew exactly who she was. No pretense, no performance. No hiding from her own power to make someone else comfortable. She was Chen Wei-Ming's granddaughter, heir to an empire built on intelligence and perseverance. She was Sophia's mother, raising a daughter who would never doubt her worth. She was a businesswoman leading a major international expansion. She was all of it, simultaneously and unapologetically. The gold digger had revealed herself to be the billionaire. But more importantly, the woman who'd been hiding had revealed herself to be exactly who she was always meant to be. Brilliant, ambitious, compassionate, and entirely unwilling to shrink herself for anyone's comfort ever again. And that was the real happily ever after. Not a fairy tale romance or a revenge plot with a tidy ending. Just a woman who'd learned to take up all the space she deserved, who'd built a life on her own terms, who'd proven that sometimes the greatest power comes from simply refusing to be anything less than yourself. Maya Chen had spent 3 years being someone else. She'd spend the rest of her life being exactly who she was. And anyone who couldn't handle that was welcome to step aside, because she had an empire to build and a daughter to raise, and absolutely no time left for making herself smaller to accommodate other people's insecurities. The lights of San Francisco glittered below her window like possibilities, and Maya smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new battles to fight. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, home, whole, and finally herself.